A for joining the Super Team Nets. Blake saying this in the response to the critics. It's kind of funny to me because for the last couple of years, all I heard is how bad I am. You sign with this team and everybody's like, that's not fair. Stephen A., some hypocrisy here. Is the Griffin-Aldridge criticism justified?
Well, first of all, it's justified. And secondly, and more importantly...
Can I ask you something? How could you ask Stephen A. that question? He's the guy doing the criticizing. Is it justified? Who's been louder about it than Stephen A.?
That would be true.
You're absolutely accurate on that point. I didn't know if I should just put him on the spot like that on Front Street right out of the gate. I was going to let him do it himself.
I said what I said. I meant what the hell I said. Ain't nobody scared of Blake Griffin. I respect the hell out of him. I really do. Not just as a basketball player, but as a person. But I said what I said. I meant what the hell I meant. All right. The fact of the matter is that he's got this wrong, though, in this sense. It wasn't me that said that. Remember, I was pointing out how Blake Griffin, and you remember when you were talking about, Max, how the dissipation and skills, and I was saying he's a place where he doesn't want to be.
Notice he's dunking now.
It's Detroit. He doesn't want to be there. He's not that interested in being there, et cetera, et cetera. You know what? You depart from L.A. to go to the Motor City. It's a difference. And you look at the Clippers franchise and what he had there compared to what he has in Detroit. It's a difference. That's what I pointed to. I certainly didn't point to some flagrant dissipation of skills. As a matter of fact, the only argument that we made, and I still stand by that, is who would you rather have, Blake Griffin or Carmelo Anthony, when we were talking about both of them. And I said I'd rather have Carmelo Anthony. And I didn't think that Blake Griffin was Carmelo Anthony. This is years ago. We had that discussion. That's the only negative thing I've ever said about Blake Griffin, and I don't consider it negative. It was just me praising Carmelo Anthony because, damn it, Carmelo Anthony deserved it. He deserves it now, and I'm very proud of my brother for doing what he's been doing.
But in between, he didn't deserve it so much.
Well, you could say he didn't deserve it, but he
does deserve it now. He deserved it then.
He had departed from the Knicks. And then remember, he was in Oklahoma City and then from Oklahoma City to Houston. But there were some issues in both respective places, which I highlighted. But for him to be out of the league was just ridiculous. And Carmelo Anthony has proved me right. I'm proud of that brother. Now let me get back to Blake Griffin. That's all I said. I've never said anything about Blake Griffin couldn't play. Matter of fact, I specifically pointed out he can play. Here's where Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge needs to understand where I'm coming from. KD might have left Oklahoma City to go to Golden State, Max and Molly. But KD was a superstar. And he arrived as a superstar. And even though they were a bomb squad, he still elevated them because he's that great. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. When you look at LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin, they were once the cornerstones of a franchise in Portland and L.A. respectively. When LaMarcus Aldridge went to San Antonio, that was a big-time free agent pickup for the San Antonio Spurs. And we were looking at them different because LaMarcus Aldridge had arrived, and obviously they had the other pieces there with Manu and Kawhi and all of that other stuff, with Tim Duncan fading into the twilight. We understood that. What I'm saying is that you look at them now, it's as if they are literally hanging on for the sole express purpose of getting a championship while making a minimal contribution. That is not the same as you being some big-time talent and then going to a team as a big-time talent where you're playing a pivotal role. And so what I'm saying is for them to join a squad where you're talking about Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge possibly not even being a fourth option. A fourth option. I'm like, damn, that's all I'm saying. And I don't apologize for that because I'm about this competition, man. It means everything to me in this sense. I want to see who you go against. How many times do I sit here with you, Max, across from you and talking to Molly? How many times do I pay attention to two things? Resume, and I talk about who you win against.
Quality of opposition.
The quality of opposition. And when the scales are tipped so dramatically that there's barely competition. I'm not saying that's really the case. I'm saying that's the intent. That's where I get alarmed. That's all I'm saying.
Blake is right about this, and you're wrong. Okay. And I will tell you why.
Please do.
First of all, Max. The media is not a monolith. We all have different things to say.
Sure.
But overwhelmingly, what Blake has been hearing recently, not from you, is you stink. You can't play anymore.
Yeah, he hear that from me.
No, he didn't hear that part from you, but he heard that. And now he's hearing overwhelmingly from the media, it's not fair. They got Blake. So he has a right to feel that way. It's not directed at you or me or just generally like, hold up, time out. Most of what is said is I can't play, and now most of what is said is it's not fair. The Nets got me. How's that work? Okay, that's number one. Number two, you're essentially saying he's ring chasing. and that when he was the cornerstone of a franchise, he couldn't get it done. And the same goes for LaMarcus Aldridge. And you're right about that. You're right. They weren't good enough to be the best player on a championship team. Maybe not even the second best player on a championship team. But I'm not going to sit here and castigate players who've come to a conclusion, especially at this point in their career, that's not easy. I can't be the man on a championship team. Know why, Stephen A? Not good enough. They're not quite good enough. It's not that they weren't fantastic players. They were. But there are levels to this. When you have a league with LeBron and KD and those guys, that's a level above the highest level Blake or LaMarcus Aldridge have ever played on. That's not a slight to them. It's praising the level that LeBron and KD have attained. So I'm not going to sit here and cast aspersions and kind of take credit away from guys, especially when they're older, who acknowledge that, okay, you know what I can be? I can be the fourth option on a championship team, especially when the addition of Blake and LaMarcus Aldridge doesn't make it unfair to the Nets. They don't really move the needle. What moved the needle for the Nets was KD, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. That's why the Nets are going to destroy everybody.
Okay. Here's my point. First of all, I'm allowed to not like something without it actually being a criticism. It just doesn't happen to be my preference. I'm not knocking Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge. I get it. But my point is that if this were a superstar that we saw descend before our very eyes, we would be like, why not just retire? As opposed to be seen as somebody who's the fourth, fifth, sixth wheel on a team riding the coattails of other people because they were so great at one moment in time and expectations were so high for them at one moment in time that to not reach that, but to still stick around, to essentially be in a uniform, sitting on the bench damn near as much as I am, okay, watching the other guys perform, but getting a ring. I'm not saying that's literally the case with LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin. Of course not. I'm not trying to disrespect them. I respect where they're coming from. I'm just saying that as a basketball purist who loves the game and loves the competitive fervor, is it all right for me to sit up there and say, I don't like it without it being a criticism?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. That I agree with, and let me explain this real quick, Molly. I need about a minute.
Sure.
I was on KD, as were you, for going to the Warriors because people like us in the media put so much stress on winning championships, right? Barkley doesn't have a chip. Shaq gives him stuff about it on the air, right? Like, that's how it goes. So these players want chips. I gave KD criticism because he reverse engineered it. He went to a team that couldn't not win a chip without him because they almost did it. They had one without him. They're one of the best teams ever made, right? And now KD joined. So what does that really prove, KD? Well, I won MVP of the finals. Stop it. You couldn't not do that. You're a great player. You joined an impossible team to beat with you on it. This is a version of that, basically, to me, is what you're saying, Stephen, and I agree with that. I think guys like Blake and LaMarcus Aldridge are there going, look, they have the names of great players because they were at their best. And now they're going to add a ring. But they're not adding a ring's not going to say anything about them as players. That's the point. A ring is supposed to say something about you as a player. These rings won't do that for Blake and Aldridge other than
by 24 without Paul George. LA, how are we feeling after last night's performance?
Everything we've been working on and frustrated about early on in the season, you can finally see it come together. Having a defensive mindset every single night.
We held them to 105 tonight, so, that's just a great defensive effort right there. I think we're just being more attention to detail. We're just playing hard from the first quarter to the, fourth quarter.
All right, Stephen A., after last night's game, we're thinking, who has the better chance to reach the finals? You think it's the Clippers after they made some moves or the Bucks?
It's the Milwaukee Bucks. Max Kellerman, for simple arithmetic reasons. They only got one team they need to go through pretty much. The Western Conference is wide open, especially if, with the sole express purpose of with the only exception, rather, is Anthony Davis if he's 100%. Then there's nothing to talk about. The Lakers will cakewalk to the finals. Outside of that, it's a crapshoot. I mean, when you look at the teams in the Western Conference, it's the Lakers, it's the Clippers, it's the Jazz, it's the Denver Nuggets, it's the Portland Trail Blazers, it's the Phoenix Suns. You just look at how loaded the Western Conference is with the Dallas Mavericks being an outside threat and what have you. We can't ignore that. In the Eastern Conference, it's about Milwaukee, Brooklyn, and Philly. Period. You know, we can look at Miami. We can look at Boston as having an outside chance and stuff like that. But it really comes down to Milwaukee, Philly, and, of course, Brooklyn being the number one team. And what if Brooklyn has to face one of them before the other? See, I don't know if Milwaukee and Philly would have to go against each other before they face Brooklyn. Because then, from an arithmetic perspective, mathematical perspective, then obviously that would be different because that would be similar to what you have to go through in the Western Conference. But I'm not anticipating that. I'm anticipating them having to face only one of them. And I think it's a situation where it's just like, hey, that's what it is. Whereas in the Western Conference, I think the Western Conference is considerably more loaded. That's all. That's the only reason.
The Clippers, I think, are far more likely to win the championship than the Bucks.
No, I was talking about getting out.
Even getting the finals. I think to reach the finals, the Clippers are far more likely than the Bucks, and I'll tell you why. And I saw it last night again with Giannis. Giannis can hit a wide open three. If you put a little pressure on him defensively, he does not hit that shot. The philosophy will be the exact same as it's been. Mm-hmm. The difference being they have Drew Holiday,
right,
who's a clutch player in the playoffs. Right. But here's the problem, Stephen A.
Mm-hmm.
I saw James Harden and Kyrie Irving go through the best teams in the Western Conference, 5 straight games on the road, beat them all without KD. Once KD gets back, it's a wrap. But let's put Brooklyn aside. So they ain't getting out of the East if they have all 3 guys. Like, forget Milwaukee getting out of the East if Brooklyn's healthy. Let's say they're not. But Embiid is playing for Philadelphia. I don't think Milwaukee's better than Philadelphia. I'll tell you something else. In the playoffs, I don't know if Milwaukee's going to be better than Miami. They weren't last year. I don't know. But I look at this Clippers team with Kawhi and Paul George. The real issue with the Clippers is Paul George is not a star when they need him to be a star. They got Rondo. That's going to help that.
Okay.
It's going to help that. And it's going to help Kawhi because Kawhi doesn't have to play point forward.
Okay.
You look at how deep this team is. Really take Ibaka and Batum. Rondo, Ibaka, Batum, Kawhi, and Paul George, that's a lot. But then look at the bench. Zubac can really play.
I like Zubac. Lakers gave him up.
Yep. Marcus Morris can play. Kennard, do you know what Kennard's hitting? I know you didn't like that deal.
I don't.
Do you know what Kennard's shooting from 3 this year? I looked it up.
Yeah.
Almost 50%. He's shooting 49%. Taking 3 threes a game, shooting 49%. Reggie Jackson can play. Patrick Beverly, we know, can play. What about this kid? Man, he's good. Like, they have they go 11 deep on the Clippers for real with 11 dudes who can play and a real all-star quality starting 5. The Clippers, the real roadblock standing in their way is a healthy AD and LeBron, which we don't know is going to happen. Denver is real tough, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I did mention another.
Yeah, Denver's going to be real tough. But when I look at the Bucks and what they're capable of versus an unbeatable Brooklyn team, and I look at the Clippers fully loaded, I don't see a single team where I'm like, if everyone's healthy, the Clippers have no shot. I think everyone healthy, including the Lakers, the Clippers have a real good shot. If everyone's healthy in the East, Milwaukee has no shot. Milwaukee's never going to get by that Brooklyn team. Forget that.
I understand that mode of thinking, but we're coming from 2 different angles. I totally understand you're saying if everybody's healthy. I'm just thinking about the number of teams in the West that you have to compete with compared to what you have to compete with in the Eastern Conference. You have a top 3, and then there's everybody else. In the Western Conference, you have a top 6, top 7. And because of that, I think the road to prosperity is significantly tougher coming out of the West than it's going to be out of the Eastern Conference. That's the only reason why I say the Bucks have an easier path. It's not that ultimately if you face Brooklyn's going to be easier than everybody. I'm picking them to win it all. I'm just simply saying that when you look at the road that you have to travel to get to that, I'm thinking it's far more difficult, just round by round, for the Clippers, I anticipate, than it would be
give you something else.
For the Milwaukee Bucks.
You know who I think matches up best with Brooklyn out of the West? I think it's actually the Clippers. I think the Clippers because they have 2 dominant two-way wings. The whole key is, can Paul George perform under pressure?
Hold it. With all due respect, and I love me some Paul George, one of my favorite people in the world, and I think he's a damn good player. And Kawhi Leonard is a silent assassin. We all know that, but I think he could elevate his level of leadership. Here's the bottom line.
Don't need to with Rondo.
Here's the bottom line. You don't get to call them great two-way players after they let Jamal Murray drop 40 in a Game 7.
They are. You're going to say they're not great two-way players?
No,
Kawhi?
What I'm saying to you is this. You're the man. It's a berth to the conference finals on the line. And not only do you lose, y'all fold offensively. Defensively, Jamal Murray dropped 40
one game, man.
Yeah, it's a game 7. It matters.
After all the game 7s or important games in Kawhi's career.
Let me tell you something right now. What have you done for me lately? I'm a Janet Jackson fan. And let me tell you something right now. What have you done for me lately matters to me. I'm telling you right now, I'm not questioning their abilities. I'm not saying that they're not these players. What I'm saying is the residual impact that was left behind, the indelible mark, is that you let Jamal Murray drop 40 on you
Rondo's going to
in a
fix
game
that.
7.
Rondo fixed it.
No, I'm not
Well,
letting. I'm not
Rondo.
forgetting that. I'm not forgetting that.
According to our basketball power index here at ESPN, the Bucks have the 5th best odds to reach the finals, and the Clippers have the 6th best. So right there, neck and neck. We'll continue this debate all season long. When we come back here on First Take, though, is it fair to criticize Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge for joining KD, Kyrie, and Harden? Kendrick Perkins, Big Perk, with some strong comments for the fellas. Plus, Russell Westbrook joined an elite group last night that includes only Magic and the Big O. Which one of the fellas wasn't impressed? First Take. Don't go anywhere. His 16th triple-double in the Wizards' 132-124 win over the Pacers. Westbrook joined Hall of Famers Magic Johnson, Oscar Robertson as the only players to score over 30 points and dish out at least 20 assists in a game. Stephen A., let's talk about Westbrook's night. Big deal or no big deal?
You know, this is a difficult subject, and I'm going to tell you why. You know, because Westbrook is a serious brother. He's real and authentic in every way, and I have nothing but the utmost profound respect for him as a man. I truly mean that. And, you know, with a lot of people, I can joke around, but not when it comes to Westbrook, because that ain't his style. You know, you don't joke when it comes to him, and I respect that. So I'm going to be as real and as authentic as I possibly can be. Westbrook's numbers last night mean absolutely nothing to me because even though that's great numbers, that's what Westbrook can do. We all know this. He's a former league MVP. He's the most athletic point guard we have ever seen in NBA history. He's been, I believe it was 4 conference finals in his career. We know this, but here's the reality of the situation. Russell Westbrook, when we look at his game, it's the same stuff every year. Might get a little bigger, strong, athletic, can take it to the basket. Still hasn't got that shot going, that three-point shot. You know, you in the same conference as Steph Curry for years. You struggling from three-point range. You going up against Dame time. The three-point shot ain't there. Kevin Durant departs. You don't make it out of the first round until you get to Houston last year. Last year in Houston, he was an MVP candidate, averaging 27, 7, and 7, okay? But in the playoffs, they obviously folded because they were going up against the Lakers and they were just overmatched. We understand that. You want out. So what do? You end up going to Washington. Now, I understand that I get to look at coaching because Scott Brooks should have some explaining to do to have the absolute worst defense in basketball. Any coach that has the worst defense in basketball should have some explaining to do. They are ranked 30th in the league in points allowed. But Bradley Beal and you are in the backcourt together, and y'all are 17 and 28 in the Eastern Conference. And you're Russell Westbrook, and I want to remind everybody who the teammates have been. Kevin Durant. Now, Russell Westbrook's getting paid over $200 million. And damn it, the fervor he brings to the game, I understand him getting that money. But in terms of results, Kevin Durant was your teammate. Harden was your teammate not once but twice. Reggie Jackson was your teammate. Serge Ibaka was your teammate. Victor Oladipo was your teammate. Paul George was your teammate. Bradley Beal is your teammate. I mean, damn. You've played with some great, great players over the years, some talent, and not a single title to show for it. So to me, if I'm going to look at everybody else, whether it's LeBron and Kyrie and Steph and everybody else, I got to look at that too. The numbers are the numbers. That's Russell Westbrook. He could do that to anybody. But I'm at a point in time in his career where it's like, it ain't about that no more. It's about whether or not you can get to another level to win the chip. Swim at.
I don't disagree with anything you just said. I think you made a lot of good points. But as you might say, I don't think you get to make those points.
Okay.
Because what do you religiously complain about? Guys taking nights off.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Regular season. Blake Griffin didn't dunk till he got to Brooklyn. Now, first thing we see a dunk on the highlights, right? Russell Westbrook.
Never cheats us.
Russell Westbrook's in a losing situation. Now, you're right. You and Bradley Beal are in the same backcourt. Figure it out in the East. You should have a 500 record at least. But you think he lets that losing situation affect the way he plays? No. Affect, you said, the fervor he brings to the game? Mm-hmm. You know what it reminds me of? Because he ain't the same dude physically as he was 5 years ago. Of course not. He's 32 years old. He's not as fast as he was just because he's still fast.
Real fast.
But he ain't what he was.
Because he got bigger.
There is a Dylan Thomas poem, Stephen A. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. That's Russell Westbrook. He ain't going gentle into anywhere. He's going to rage until the day they rip the uniform off of him. And I'm someone who will tell you, you're like, oh, Max, you don't care about the regular season. That's right, and I don't apologize. Because more than 50% of the teams now make the playoffs. Like the season ends, the 9 and 10 and the 7 and 8 are playing in a play-in tournament. Guess what? If the season's over and you're still playing, that's the postseason. 10 out of 15 teams per conference, 20 out of 30 in the league. 2/3 of the league are playing after the season's over in the postseason. Guess what? I don't care about the regular season as much. So I hear what you're saying, but Russell Westbrook does. Russell Westbrook, every time he steps on the court, gives you 100% effort. Whether he's on a winning team or a losing team, whether they're going somewhere or not. That man just put up a triple-double with 30 points and 20 assists? No. Other people can make the point you just made about Russell Westbrook. I don't think you can.
I can.
You complain about this all the time.
Because it's a different argument when it comes to Russell Westbrook. It doesn't dilute what I've said about other players around the league. What I'm trying to tell you is that Russell Westbrook has teased and spoiled us with his greatness. He's a phenomenal, phenomenal athlete. But you have to pay attention to the competition that you're going against. And at some point in time, it can't be about your stubbornness and your dogged approach to doing what you do. It has to be you paying attention to what makes other people successful and then finding a way to emulate them. Max, you've lamented this. I got Russell Westbrook's numbers right in front of me. Since 2014, since the 2013-2014 season, since then, Russell Westbrook has shot 29, 29, 34, 29, 29, 25, and now he's at 31% from three-point range.
You can't shoot.
Ultimately, but what I'm trying to say is that, I mean, look, man, what else are you doing? You understand what I'm saying? You make enough money.
He just did a triple-double with 30 points, 20 assists.
Work on your shot. I'm telling you right now, Russell Westbrook can do that against anybody in the regular season. He'll put up numbers, but at the end of the day, when there's an elevated level of standard his greatness demands. I want to be talking about Russell Westbrook as a champion. I'm rooting for him to win the championship. I don't root against guys like that. He's real, and he gives you all he's got, and he's coming at you all night long. I just want that.
Houston last year.
Well, he had COVID. He came.
No, but I'm saying he played a team game. Russell Westbrook, who's always selfish, he'll play a team game.
But I'm not calling him selfish. I'm saying that I need more production.
You want him to shoot.
I need more production from him.
If Russell Westbrook could shoot from the outside, be the best player who ever lived.
Russell Westbrook has graduated from the point where we talk about his numbers. It's about results now. He's too great to be in a losing situation like that.
No one has gone to more Wizards games here at ESPN than Stephen A. Smith. Come on, you know he can't win a chip there. They're 12th in the East. No one's gone to more Wizards games in the nation's capital than you. You know the man does not have a squad around him. He's in the company of Magic and the Big O.
Well, I wasn't talking about just this year. I'm talking about all the last several years.
I know.
Particularly when we see how they loading up in Brooklyn, Jeannie Buss is saying, hold your horses. We're the reigning, defending NBA champions, and we think we're going to have something to say about all of that in the end. We just picked up Andre Drummond, who averages nearly 14 rebounds a game in his career. We expect to have Anthony Davis back. LeBron James, we have no doubt he will be back. And so when you consider the pieces that we have in place, we think we're going to have something to say about, who's standing in the end. And that's what she's saying, and that's the kind of mentality that you want champions to have. She's basically staking claim to the fact that she doesn't believe that the Lakers are going anywhere for the foreseeable future, and the lovely, incomparable Board of Governors for the Los Angeles Lakers has significant credibility when she says such things, and I sincerely hope that's going to be the case this season.
There's a level of what we used to say gangsterism in Jeannie Buss, just like her father. They are not sweating what you're doing. They get crewed up. Look, here's the thing about the Lakers and the Buss family. Dr. Jerry Buss, the late, great Dr. Jerry Buss, was by far the greatest owner in the history of American team sports. Please don't embarrass anybody else by comparing them to him. Trust me. Look at the resume. Jeannie Buss, a chip off the old block. And think how hard it is to be her that way because you're following an impossible act to follow. And yet, even though she upheld her father's basically dying wish, keep the family together, with the team, and kept her brother in the position running the team probably an extra year that she should have for 4 years instead of 3 years, she eventually said, okay, enough, we got to win. Took over the team, and since she's been calling the shots and put her basketball people in place, 3 years later, they won a championship. They won a championship in 3 years. And now they're looking to defend. And she knows if her squad is healthy, she's not looking for an unfair advantage against the Nets, right? Go ahead, let the Nets get crewed up. The Lakers are crewed up, and let the chips fall where they may. They're not sweating it. Love me some Jeannie Buss. How could you not, as a Lakers fan, how could you not love that attitude?
Right. As a competitor, how can you not love that attitude? We have to remember who Jeannie Buss has been around also and watch grow into one of the greatest players of all time, in my opinion, Kobe Bryant. She came out with the Mamba mentality. That's a Mamba mentality. Bring it on. We are the defending champs. I got arguably the best duo since Kobe and Shaq. And here's the thing, right? You got to love the competitive nature. And I look back in 2016 when the other super team was formed and down there in the Bay Area with the Golden State Warriors. The great Greg Popovich from the San Antonio Spurs, when asked about him at the beginning of the season, he said, I get it, right? Don't quote me on this. I may not have it all right, but I know he said something along the lines of, we understand how great of a team they are on paper, but who's going to beat them? That's the thing. Who's going to step up and try to beat them? And when you look at what happened to them when the Spurs and them met up in the Western Conference Finals, the San Antonio Spurs had them down 20 at halftime before Zaza Pachulia slid his big size 23s up under Kawhi Leonard's feet, who was tearing them up, by the way, 26 points in 23 minutes. So I love the competitive nature. I mean, it should bring out the best of every team. Who's going to beat them? Who's going to try to beat this Nets team that is stacking up right now? That's the spirit you want to have.
That's exactly what we need, too. We need to be reminded of that. We need to we need to be reminded of the importance of competition. I mean, see, this is what it is about basketball, man. It's like a team sport is a team sport. We get it. But it's like when a batter shows up, Max, to play baseball, when he shows up to the batter's box, it's about him against that pitch at that particular moment in time. One of the things that I hate and absolutely detest in the world of sports, I don't know if I hate anything more than the intentional walk. I don't know if I hate anything more, because that's you basically saying, you know what, I don't want to compete against you.
Well, it's your manager saying that.
Yeah, no, it's your manager. But guess what? The manager never told Randy Johnson that. Wouldn't tell Roger Clemens that. Wouldn't tell some of the great, one of Mike, Nolan Ryan and others that. No, you know what they would have done to them if a manager told them to intentionally walk somebody? No, we ain't going out like that. Let's get it on. And I'm saying you transfer that to basketball. And one of the things that I think is incredibly important to remind everybody, that's what we really, really want to see. You know, one of the reasons why I backed off, even though I called it when KD went to Golden State, the weakest move I'd ever seen by a superstar. The reason I backed off about that is because I never forget the first moments of that finals when he was finally in the finals for Golden State against LeBron in Cleveland. He scored the jump shot and then clapped his hands and spread his arms wide, defending against LeBron like, let's go. It was his way of saying, okay, here we go now.
Why? It's because his mom went at you.
I just said, no. I did apologize to Mama. Mama Durant. I mean, come on. I love Mama Durant now. I mean, I got a soft spot for that lady. But what I'm saying to you is that the point is, he was sitting there saying, let's go. It's me and you now. You had your crew. I got my crew. Now it's me and you. I'm just saying, we want to see that. It's important in the sport of basketball. That's how basketball became popular.
But the thing about the Lakers is, you're right, I'm with that attitude. The thing about being a Lakers fan, or in Jeannie's case, the owner of the team, is that when you're like, okay, let's go, right? You're coming at them with Shaq and Kobe, with Magic and Kareem, with LeBron and AD. You're not coming at them with, you know, you talk about Blake and LaMarcus Aldridge. You're not coming at them with CP3 and Blake, which was a great combination, but it's not enough. So Jeannie's saying, come on, we got 2 MVP players on the team. We got who we need. Let's go. And that's the thing about the Lakers. They'll get their guys. They'll get guys, even if it's not, oh, this is unfair. Because back in the day, the Celtics were just as good as the Lakers now. Let's see it, right?
KP, Kendrick, before you say anything else, I will do have an open confession to make. When the Lakers are winning basketball games, the breeze in L.A., the palm trees, it just feels a little different. There's something a little extra special about L.A. when the Lakers are relevant. It's just a little, it's just a little ambiance in the air. It just feels good. I just want to say.
So basically, to sum it all up, Jeannie Buss just said, in the words of Patrick Beverly, I ain't trying to hear all that. Jump ball. Jump ball.
Right.
Amen.
Carry on.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Perfect.
Go ahead,
Let's keep
Molly.
it going, guys. On the subject of the Nets here, we got Blake Griffin isn't having any of it. Just another all-star on the new team filled with all-stars. Laughed off criticisms of unfairness after the team acquired him. James Harden and LaMarcus Aldridge all within the past 2.5 months. Perk, I want to start with you. Is the criticism of Blake and Aldridge justified that they're kind of ring chasing on this bandwagon of the Nets?
Yeah, it is, because here it is, Molly. Like, these are not guys that were role players on the team, on another team, and came over to join the Brooklyn Nets. Like, when I was at the tail end of my career, I've been a role player all my life. But at the end of my career, I knew I wasn't getting minutes, but I wanted to get on the team that I could win a championship with. It was different. I knew I wasn't getting in the game. I knew I had to be a locker room guy, the ultimate professional, a veteran leader. It was a difference for me because I was a role player. These are 2 guys that are former All-Stars, guys that got paid hundreds of millions of dollars, that probably had other options where they could go and actually contribute. We don't know how many minutes Blake Griffin is going to get. We don't know how many minutes LaMarcus Aldridge is going to get, but they're not going to be playing 25 to 20 minutes a night. We know that much. When the Nets are fully healthy, somebody is going to have to sacrifice some minutes. So what I'm saying is, they could have, I'm pretty sure they had other options and other teams that were reaching out to them that they could have joined, that they could have played a significant role of trying to compete and help and playing meaningful minutes to go win a title. So the criticism is fair. It is fair to say that. Now, I mean, hey, y'all on the team, good luck to y'all, but it is fair. It's fair.
I don't think that criticism is fair. I would say, Stephen A. pointed something out earlier. I would agree with this. Because I don't really think they move the needle, either guy at this point. I mean, they're live bodies, but that's about it at this point. Then it is sort of like they're buying a ring. Because the Nets, if they're healthy, they're going to win this year, everybody. I have bad news for you. They went through the Western Conference without KD. Went 5-0 on a West Coast road trip without KD.
Right.
So these dudes are purchasing rings. In that sense, you want to criticize them, fine. But I think of a dude like Andre Iguodala. Iguodala was miscast as the best or maybe second best player on a team in Philly. You ain't going to win a championship that way. But Iguodala was a legitimately great player. And if he's the 4th best dude on your team, you're going to win a championship. It's hard for players, I think, to recognize that, especially players in college. They're elite. They come out. They want to be MVP types, to say, wait a minute, maybe that's not me in this league, but I can still be great. I'm looking right now at Aaron Gordon on Denver. Watch what happens. Not carry the team, but join this team and contribute. He could be great. Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge should not be criticized for the fact that they weren't good enough to be the number 1 or 2 guy on a championship team. That, to me, is not legitimate criticism. They played as well as they could.
Well, first of all, a couple of things. Number one, hold on, KP. I'll deal with him for a second. Here's a couple of things, Max Kellerman. Number one, I hear you saying repeatedly over the last couple of weeks that the Nets, are going to win the chip. Welcome to the party. It took you long enough.
I had to see them play together.
Congratulations, because even after they got James Harden and they had him with Kyrie and Kevin Durant, you were saying their defense was so awful. That
changed.
It's not going to happen. It changed.
It's a fluid
list. Did I not tell you that they could prove marginally, and that's all it required? That's all. Number one. Number two, I love how you mentioned a bit earlier that Giannis can't shoot contested jump shots. It took.
You want to bring up old stuff?
I'm just saying.
You told me Harden couldn't run point for Houston.
No, I never told you that.
Yes, you did.
That is a lie.
That's on tape.
That is a lie.
Go find the tape.
I never said that.
When D'Antoni made a point guard, you said, I don't like it. He's not a point guard.
I said I don't like it with D'Antoni because I know how D'Antoni does stuff. But that's fine. All right, I'll take that. You know what? You proved me wrong because I'll give credit to D'Antoni for that because he did something I didn't think he could do. Let me get to my point.
Bring up old stuff.
Let me get to my point about Blake Griffin and Aldridge. And KP, you know, nothing but love for you. No disrespect here, so please don't take it this way. Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge were once cornerstones of a franchise. You were an enforcer, a rebounder, a defender that played your role offensively. There is absolutely nothing wrong with somebody like you as age and attrition kicks in to go on a team to jump on a bandwagon. But somebody that was the cornerstone of a franchise, that went to this very important point I'm about to bring up, that went to the negotiating table and demanded dollars of a cornerstone of a franchise. To some, your piggyback, listen, you can say old, but I'm not sure about that. What I'm saying to you is this. Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge combined to take about $20 million less with their buyouts to end up on the Brooklyn Nets. I feel you on that. But what I'm saying is, again, it's not a criticism. I'm just saying that when I look at a team and I look at you as a player and you were once a star, if you descend to that point, usually people are telling you to retire, not to jump somewhere else to be able to say you got a ring when you spent the vast majority of your career collecting a check that said you can be the cornerstone of a franchise that ultimately captures a ring. That's the difference. I want KP to respond to that point that I just made, Max, because it's important. Go ahead, KP. What I just said, any issue with that?
No, not at all. Look, Stephen A., I was comfortable with who I was as a role player. I knew at the tail end of my career, I was the guy that was going to be on the end of the bench, averaging 2,500 claps a game. And I was okay with that. But you're right. And you take a guy like Carmelo Anthony, for example, right? I'm pretty sure he could have went set on somebody's bench and not get meaningful minutes and not get playing time. But he said, no, I want to play.
I can still play.
Hoop. I still can hoop at the age of 35, at the age of 36. Portland, give me a chance. And he's playing meaningful minutes. Man, I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. I'm saying that he is saying, I want to work for it. I still can contribute. I'm going to play 25 to 28 minutes a game.
I think that this is really about that we agree. Because I think what this is really about is people misinterpreting the message from the media and the fans, which is we're counting rings. So when I hear the argument, well, Robert Horry's got all these rings, that doesn't make him better than Michael Jordan. Well, no, of course not, because he wasn't the best player on his team. But it does say something about Robert Horry. And I think enough players have gotten that message that they're like, I better get a ring before I retire or I'm never going to hear the end of it. And so they'll pay money. They'll, like in a buyout, they'll lose money. Basically, they're buying a ring. I understand what you mean. These are not players that are going to move the needle for the Brooklyn Nets, really. But they get a ring out of it. I agree with. But that's different than saying. That's different than saying. Yeah, go ahead.
But Max, go ahead.
But Max, you saying and I get your point. They're not going to move the needle for the Brooklyn Nets. But I think to me and Stephen A's point is that they could have went somewhere else and proved that they could move the needle for another organization or another contender.
At this point, yes.
But I'm saying at this point, what does that do?
Oh, stop. Max, LaMarcus Aldridge is not a scrub. He can still play.
They're going to get minutes.
Blake Griffin is not a scrub. He can still play. I'm saying they could have went to another team that needed them even more to go up against a Goliath like Brooklyn. But you're not. No. But I'm saying they're not supposed to think that way, Max. They're not supposed to think that way.
This is what I'm saying. When you get to a certain point in your career, if you acknowledge, this is what I am now. Well, this is what it is. This is the point for a team like Brooklyn. You got 96 minutes a game between the 4 and the 5 with the Nets, right? You got Claxton, DeAndre Jordan, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Blake Griffin. They're going to get minutes.
Max, what I'm not talking about the minutes. I'm saying you were once the cornerstone of a franchise.
I was then.
Stay with me, bro. You were once the cornerstone of a franchise, and you're not even a fourth option, and you're okay with that. I'm saying if there were any, when we look at stars, we go like this. retire before you do that. And I'm not, think about it. I'm not saying Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge can't play. I'm saying they can play, so they should want to compete instead of tipping the scales on a particular franchise.
They ain't tipping those scales.
With Kyrie, listen, with Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant, do you know that all LaMarcus Aldridge has to do is stand on one baseline or the other, literally stand still? He don't even have to run.
You get a lot of guys
He can literally stand still and average 10 to 15 a game, shooting uncontested shots like he's in warm-ups because you got to preoccupy yourself with those guys.
I disagree with both of your points, Perk. I disagree with you and Stephen A. that they should want to compete in a losing effort at this point in their careers. I will say this. I also disagree with them that this ring will say anything about their careers other than they were willing to purchase a ring. I don't think, the players have gotten the message that I better win a ring or I'll never hear the end of it. I don't think KD going to Golden State proved anything because you can't lose there. I don't think that LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin winning a ring with the Nets will prove anything.
But Max, you were one of the same people in the world that was saying that Carmelo Anthony was done, right?
Yep.
You were one of the few that was saying that. You were saying that he wasn't moving the needle, and he still had a lot of basketball left in him.
Prove me wrong.
Wanted to show the world that. So look, let me give you an example. I know a lot of people were criticizing LeBron James, right? Saying that all these jokes or whatever, saying that, hey, Carmelo Anthony is his banana boat buddy and all this. Why is he not without a job? He could be on the Lakers. Here's why he wasn't on the Lakers. And they were saying that he should replace Jared Dudley. But here's why Carmelo wasn't probably on the Lakers, because he probably wasn't going to accept a lesser role like a Jared Dudley, probably not being able to dress out for 10 to 15 games or having to show up to work, not being able to play. Carmelo wasn't going to be okay with that. And that's the difference between being a role player and used to being a cornerstone like Stephen A. That's a big difference.
Oh, and Max, here's the other point that I want to make to you. You act like LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin got their double ARP cards. LaMarcus Aldridge, his game wasn't predicated on athleticism. He's a 6'11" jump shooter, essentially.
But not a
who can play with
shooter.
Who can play with his back to the basket, but he's a 6'11" jump shooter. He's 35. Blake Griffin.
And he don't shoot the three.
And Blake Griffin is 32. These guys.
But his game was predicated on athletics.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say to you is, again, remember, I understand it. I'm not, and this is the part, I'm not criticizing them. I'm simply saying, as a basketball fan, I would have preferred to see if it's both of them. At least one go to Brooklyn and one go somewhere else, rather than both of them being on Brooklyn. And if you go somewhere, let's make sure that we're trying to compete as opposed to tip the scale so dramatically that we're willing to be former franchise players who collected hundreds of millions of dollars that's perfectly content with playing a fifth or sixth man role on a team.
Karl Malone and Gary Payton went to the Lakers at a certain point.
They
Bill Walton was
started,
on the Celtics. Okay, fine, they started, but still, and actually they didn't wind up winning championships.
Well, they went to the finals, and Gary Payton got a chip.
They were cornerstones.